All right. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me. My name is David Ciccarelli, the CEO and co-founder of Voices. We're here for our once a month session and get together on YouTube Live. There's a good number of us joined here today. So give a quick shout out if you're one of the crew who's joined us on, and let us know where you're watching from. That would be great to hear. Today, just a couple things to mention off the top. Again, thanks for being here. This is Voices Office Hours, which we hold on the last Friday of every month. This month we just did it a week early, but nonetheless, you can look out for updates on social or just pen it in your calendar. It's going to be the last Friday of every month, and it starts at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Today's topic is all about auditions. It seems to be what a lot of people wanted to hear about last go around. So we're going to dedicate the entire time together on that. I would encourage you to use the questions on the sidebar of YouTube. Julia's working with me as well too, helping answer some of those and drop links in where we can, just so we can make the most of the time together. And of course, as always, we'll provide a quick video recap update if you want to go back and watch something that you might have missed. So let's get going. Some of the questions that had come in earlier today. The first one was from Kelly Sheridan from YouTube Live. Thanks, Kelly. I occasionally quote higher than the budget posted if the job looks interesting, but the budget is too low for the user's scope. Do you have any data on how often projects are awarded to VOs who bid or quote over budget? So really great question there, Kelly. A nice meaty one to get started with. When quoting, you're right. There's kind of two flavors of jobs that for those who might not be aware are going to see, let's call it a budget range, where it's somewhere between $250 and $500. There's times where it's a fixed budget where the client says, no, I've got $500 to spend on VO, and they're just going to give a firm or fixed number. You'll see that on the job posting on Voices. Now, when you're glancing at all the details for this particular project and you're kind of making an assessment of, the scope of work, maybe the usage, is it just for radio or is it TV? Is it, used worldwide, or is it maybe more narrow geographic market? So as you're doing that assessment and you realize, this budget that was initially put there seems a little low for what you would expect, then of course you have complete control and flexibility to go outside the budget range and often higher. And in fact, that's actually something pretty common. A couple quick tips. If the client has invited you directly, and I know we got another question on that as well, what we refer to as a private invitation, if the client's invited you directly through one of these private invites, you'll see that in the email invitation that comes to you as well within the Voices application, then you know that they sought you out. And if you feel like the budget was a little bit low, they've already selected you. And so I would say that would be one opportunity where there would be a higher, let's call it a willingness to pay, an economic term that, really aligns what somebody really wants with kind of where their threshold is, where their budget might be able to go a little bit higher because they've already made that, pre-selected you and made that, hiring decision, at least in their mind. Now they're just using the Voices platform just to get the quote and kind of formalize the deal. So that might be one option. Other times where, actually, you're right, Kelly, in the situation where you look at the scope and you realize, wow, geez, this seems lower than this kind of elusive industry standard rate, a term that kind of gets thrown around. There's rate sheets on the GVAA. There's rate sheets on voices.com. If you go to the bottom section of every page on our website, you'll see the rates they're posted. Those are just guidelines, frankly. But if it falls below, somewhere in there at the low end and you feel it should be higher, then absolutely quote above that. I didn't have time to actually look at, pull some data. It sounds like we're a data-driven company. So I didn't get time to pull data on how often projects are awarded. That certainly happens. Now, what I can tell you that there was a recent internal report that the awarded talent actually quoted at the high end or outside the rate sheet. So a lot of commentary that our actual existing rate sheet seems to be maybe a little bit lower than the awarded job. So I would infer from that other talent are likely pushing up their quotes in those situations described. So great question, Kelly. We're going to go to Ferland's voiceovers from YouTube. Hello, thanks for the stream. How much would one charge for a live session per hour after we've already agreed upon the budget? And they have specified no live session. One option would be a session fee. Would be more familiar with, a typical session fee. You can think of it a couple ways. What does it cost to book out a recording studio? And then also your time, usually somewhere in the range of $200, maybe even $350. I think in the union side of the landscape, I think session fees are about $350. So you can think of that would be a session fee. The reason why some talent charge live session fees is because it's taking more time. Now, clients like the live session because they can give you direction, they can get multiple takes, they feel like they're contributing into that creative process. So that's something where if you just got the script sent to you, I'm sure you could maybe knock this out in 1 or 2 takes, send it by email, or again upload through a platform like Voices, and be on your merry way. So these live sessions are like, we want to book you for a whole hour. You're like, whoa, that's a lot more time than you need to deliver a great voiceover, but it's what they want. So I would position this as a compensation or consideration of your time, where you would charge a live session fee, and somewhere in the neighborhood $250 to kind of $350 is what I've seen. Miss O'Brien says from live YouTube, YouTube Live, how does someone get into the voiceover business? You want to do animations, anime, video games, and given a bunch of different answers, and you're curious as to what way works best. So a couple thoughts off the top of my head. Probably the reason why you've gotten a bunch of different answers is because everyone has their own journey. They come with their own experiences and life skills, and maybe they live in different parts of the country or different parts of the world even, and consequently they're going to have their own experience. And so one way to maybe even frame that question when you're in this learning and information absorption kind of mode is say, how did you do it, right? How is it that what have you seen effective? So that's the kind of the initial advice, and maybe some context of why you're getting so many different answers. There's probably, like most things in life, no one single way to do it. That said, I think there's some practices, if you will, that would be probably pretty common threads through everyone's story that you've heard so far. The first one is, people typically have a background in acting. It could be in live performances, it could be theater, usually maybe some improv lessons. So if you have a background in acting where you're, comfortable with reading scripts, often internalizing them, kind of becoming that character, if you will, then that would be a great place to start, is taking some acting classes or even improv classes. That would certainly really help out. If you're not quite there yet and you just want to get practice reading, then I always say read aloud, read scripts till you can't anymore. Really read. You can download free scripts from Voices. You can go to something like ispot.tv where you can get access to commercials that are live online. Look at the top, Super Bowl ads from the last year. Check them out on YouTube, and really just get a sense of what's hot now. What are the trends? What are the words that are being said? And you could transcribe those and then read some of those scripts out just for practice. So reading is going to be part of the exercise for sure. And then looking at taking some classes, whether they're voiceover classes or not. Ultimately you want to lead up into the point where the real first thing you're going to need, which is some marketing collateral, and that piece would be your voiceover demo. So I know there's a ton of questions here. I think what would be great is if Julia, we could include the link to the beginner's guide to voice acting. And this is a free guide. There's 13 chapters in it. It's pretty dense read. You can read it all at once. We're also working on creating a video format to complement the written guide as well too. But really all the advice that I would give you would be in effect, paraphrasing what's in that guide. So that'd be a great place to check out. But continue on your journey. Work towards getting that first demo produced. So if you're want to do animation and dubs, then I'd be looking at practicing character voices. And so make sure you're finding scripts that represent that, as well as a coach that can lead you towards producing a demo that would be for animation or character voices as well too. So great question. Going back to Kelly, I didn't want to pass over this. I know seems like we're going to be jumping around a lot and talking about everything to do about auditions today here on Voices Office Hours. Kelly asked what percentage of projects are invite only. Just curious to know how many clients open up to general auditions as opposed to how many are kind of smaller pools selected by the clients. So great question. The simple answer is I'm going to say it's probably one of these classic 80-20 Pareto principles, where about 80% of the jobs actually are opened up to what we would refer to as like a public invitation, where our voice match system takes those job posting requirements and invites, based upon your profile, the most suitable talent for that particular job. So that's probably, I want to say 70, 80% of the jobs kind of fall in that camp. The other, balance there, call it 20%, would be these private invitations only. Now, I'm going to go back and check my math and the data on this one. But last time I recall is somewhere in that neighborhood, for a couple reasons. I think first off, there's a lot more effort for the client to go through, do the searching, listening. Oh yeah, I like them. Invite one person, listen to somebody else, invite another person. Whereas, so it's a lot more labor intensive, if you will. When the client can post a job, then they actually have the ability to outline their job once and one time only, and then really let the system invite the talent that are kind of best fit. So a lot easier for the clients. I know from a product design, we tend to highlight the job posting option the best, or I should say the most, not necessarily the best, but the most, just because we found over the years that it's a pretty common practice of, hey, describe what you're looking for, and then talent will reply to you. So somewhere in the neighborhood of 80-20, but maybe we'll pull some data, and Julia and I can check. Julia and I can check back next month on that. All right. So Christy, speaking of private invites, Christy from U2 Live says, we received a private invite this past week, and I couldn't locate it using the private invite filter option on the webpage. Is that common? So possible what might have happened there is that initially this was sent out as a public posting. Just follow me. Sent out as a public posting, and clients can go back into the search afterwards and invite people directly, what we call a private. So it's started as a public job. It'll remain, just call it a job. They made the public invitations, the system matched and invited some people. Maybe they wanted to hear from you, or they're eager in the first kind of couple hours. They didn't get, as many, or the type of caliber that they were looking for, or the quotes were maybe not quite what they're expecting. Or maybe, as I say, maybe it's just kind of wee hours in the morning, not a lot of auditions. They might have done some searching and then invited you. So there is a scenario where it can be a job with initially public invitations, with kind of voice match invites people, and then the client subsequently and shortly thereafter goes in, invites a few people one-on-one. So that's probably the scenario that happened, which caused it not to show up in that filter. But duly noted, we'll make sure that we've flagged that one for the product team as well. So thanks for the insight there. So we've got a question here from Yanira, and she's also on YouTube Live. Just asking, where do you guys record your voice auditions? Is there a specific app? So kind of a two-parter there. Where do the auditions get recording? Nowadays, most people work from home studios for a whole handful of reasons. There's so many auditions that, an opportunity out there that really people don't have time to travel around to studio and kind of incur that additional cost as well. So not the most efficient way to be going to other studios. If you have a decent home studio setup, a quiet room, a good microphone, then you can really be recording auditions, dare I say, all day long, certainly to your heart's content. So that was before COVID. Now, in the midst of the pandemic, the reality is this is still an ongoing situation and health crisis that we all find ourselves in. That's just accelerated that trend dramatically. So almost think of us, if that was a trend that already had some momentum, that's just accelerated us into the future, call it, 3 to 5 years. And so this home auditioning is definitely the way that it happens now. A lot of recording studios were either closed down temporarily or more permanently. And clients have then discovered, hey, they can still get their work done by using a platform such as Voices and hiring talent remotely. So the where, probably somewhere in your home or your apartment, could be as simple as a spare bedroom that's kind of set up and treated. Hopefully, put some, maybe as rudimentary as some blankets or foam on the walls just to kind of dampen the sound. Curtains over the windows, that kind of thing, so that you're not getting these slap back sound from the glass. Alternatively, some people have even, built out a whisper room or a vocal booth. A whisper room's a brand name, but a vocal booth in a closet. Bought one of these whisper rooms. They can be quite pricey, but you can get them, gently used or secondhand on eBay, or up here in Canada, we have Kijiji, so a classified site, probably on Craigslist as well too. So those are options for buying a prefab vocal booth for your home. So that's where auditions are getting recorded nowadays. So hopefully that inspires some options. There's a great article on our blog about soundproofing your room, a room in the house. And so we'll maybe you can pull that link up. And then, is there a specific application? We actually have also written and actually ran a survey around which apps are most popular, for recording. The number one by far is Adobe Audition. It's professional. It comes with the Adobe Creative Cloud suite. And by subscribing to the Adobe Creative Cloud, you're also getting access to other things like Illustrator or Photoshop or some other publishing tools as well too. So Adobe Audition is pretty affordable. We actually listed the top recording software on our blog as well too, so we can check that out. That's probably the number one. If you're looking for a free solution and you're on a Mac, check out GarageBand. It comes pre-installed on every Mac that's sold. Or you can, if you're a PC user, you can try Audacity. Is also a free application just to get yourself familiar with recording, playing back, listening, and editing as well. So just going to take a quick sip here as we check out some of the other questions. And I see we've got a question that's similar around what would be the best equipment if you're on a budget. So those of you who may not be aware, and I mentioned this last time, that my formal training is actually not in business or computer science, but actually in audio engineering, and often get these questions about, oh, I want to buy a very expensive microphone or a really top kind of notch software suite like Pro Tools for audio recording. Reality is, I'd say the best place you can start is actually soundproofing your room. I've given a couple quick tips already, but I would make sure that your room sounds the quietest, that it doesn't have, you're not hearing cars rumble around outside. There's not some air conditioning unit that's going. That's just going to be low-level background noise that somebody playing back with headphones on, it's just going to sound very distracting. And that's just the first giveaway between, dare I say, professional and amateur or aspiring talent. So I would work on the room sound before investing heavily elsewhere. But there's free software, and once it gets into the computer, it's just software. So I mean, you're talking, what happens between your voice. So what's it, hit next? It's kind of this room sound. So treat that. Then it hits the microphone. So I would invest in a microphone. And then how does it get into your computer? And there's, a USB microphone plugs right into your computer. So it's doing the conversion from analog, which is your voice, into digital, the language of the computer. So that conversion is really a critical part. That's why sometimes you'll see in forums or other groups and message threads, people talk about a digital audio converter. Basically, it's a much more sophisticated and higher quality sound at that point of conversion. So those can be purchased again for a couple $100. I'd say all in for a pretty solid setup, you'd be between the computer, the microphone, a digital audio interface, probably around $1,000. I would look at, and just keep that in mind. If it's less than that, then maybe you need to compromise on one of those, but consider the room sound first. That would be one of my tips. Okay, so let's keep going here together, guys. We have someone who's asked that they've done almost 100 auditions, many listens, and they've been shortlisted for 7 of those. So based upon the stats, what's the approximate number of auditions before landing a job? So we've actually got a frequently asked question article on this. So really kind of we're talking about like the statistics around being a successful talent. It seems to be about if you can get a 5% or higher shortlist rate, you're in pretty good standing. And so if you've gotten lots of listens, so which is this next one, 70% or higher, well, you would think that every audition would be listened to. Some clients make decisions very quickly, and they unfortunately don't get to listen to all of them. So there's this real sense of urgency. If you get an opportunity that's sent to you, your inbox, you're ready to go, you think it's a good fit, don't delay, don't put it off till the evening. Don't say, I'll get to it tomorrow. Tomorrow's the enemy of today, right? We can always do something tomorrow. So if you can get it done today, though, it means that you have, again, you're increasing the likelihood of being listened at and ultimately being hired. So look at something like a 70% listen rate, and then shortlists is right around 5%. And the reason why that's so much lower, not every client uses the shortlist feature and functionality on Voices, where they're narrowing it down. So I wouldn't kind of read too much into that. But check out the stats on there, and maybe again we can get those copy and pasted into the thread here. That would be awesome to do. So we got a couple more questions. We're just going to still talking about auditions today, which I love that there's so much engagement on this. Luciano asks, what would you call perfect editing for an audition? This is actually a question from Instagram. What would you call perfect editing for an audition? Should I be removing out the breaths? What kind of levels, highest and lowest peaks, etc.? So, clients, when they're looking for an audition, the most important thing is that, should they move ahead with you, they want you to sound like that audition. There's nothing worse than the client they like what they hear on the audition, they go to hire and like, this doesn't even sound like the same person. So you don't want to be, it's a fine line between, you want to sound natural. You don't want to sound too tight where you've edited out every single breath and moved it all together where you can almost sounds lifeless. So you want to sound natural. I wouldn't edit out every breath. However, you might want to consider at least editing out the first one, especially if you're only going to record, call it, 15, 30 seconds. You can probably do that in a breath or two. And what some talent do is they actually take a deep breath. And this is actually a really great trick that was told to me years ago. And I'll pass it along to you, because sometimes it's hard to just hit that first line. And if you start by saying something like, what somebody once said to me, and then go that, and you have something like that, what I heard yesterday was, and then you go into the line, and it actually kind of like gets you, almost think of it as like a running start, and it makes it much more conversational. Like, you know what I heard the other day? And then you go into the script. So that way you're getting your breath, you get your first kind of running start, and then when you go into editing, of course you want to edit all that bit out. Now, the other thing in terms of a perfect editing for Audition, which is the question here from Luciano, is you might want to edit out any awkward mouth noises. Maybe there's something that happens in the middle, a lip slap, your mouth's really moist for whatever reason. It's the click or sounds aren't attached to a word or a consonant, but it's something that could just be potentially distracting. If you hear something like that and it bugs you, and we all know we're all our own critics, but if it bugs you, somebody else might hear it as well too. So you can edit that out. That's probably where I would take it from an editing standpoint. Make sure it doesn't tail on too long at the end either. So sometimes that's called the top and tail. You add at the beginning and you add at the end. And anything in the middle, I would probably leave it unless it's something noticeable and awkward. Then when it comes to some people take it to another level where they're like, oh, I'm feeling tempted to add in some special effects, such as reverb. And reverb is really simulating a large room sound. Sometimes you hear it like, oh, it sounds like I'm in a live performance hall. Maybe on your home sound system, you have a movie theater setting and it sounds like I'm in a movie theater. Or it sounds like I'm in a live performance hall. And it sounds just more echoey. That is not what any producer wants to hear on a voiceover demo. I would not include any of that. Unfortunately, on some software applications like GarageBand, if you just put it on, and Randy, our in-house audio video producer, you probably see him on our YouTube channel. We were recording something the other day, actually me doing a quick take on using GarageBand. And we were laughing because the default setting, when you say, oh, I'm going to do a voiceover, it had this reverb sound that sounded like as if I'm on the edge of the Grand Canyon. I'm like, why would it was so distracting? It almost made it harder for people to hear and listen and comprehend the words and the key message that needed to be completed or communicated. Sorry. So I would get rid of, turn all that stuff off. You don't need it. The clients they're not going to be impressed. In fact, it'll be a distraction. And then lastly, no music. Don't include music unless the client explicitly asks for it on a demo. Because again, just trying to protect us from ourselves here. If you make a musical choice that you really like the song, but they don't like the song or they don't like the genre of music, then all of a sudden is that you've excluded yourself or disqualified yourself from the running because of your music choice, not because of your great voice. So that's where mixing in music as part of the audition, because you think it's going to add something to it. Clients want to hear what's known as a dry voice, no effects, no music, as clean of a recording as you can get them with, and because they're going to make those choices themselves. And finally, when you're about to kind of click export or bounce to disk or whatever the term is in your particular software, make sure that the levels. So this was again, Luciano asked the question like, okay, what the VU meter or the meter, how high should it be in terms of the peaks? I would probably go like -6, -3 dB. If you're bumping all the way up and you see these like vertical, green meters going and they're hitting 0 and it's clipping, it basically, when it clips, it creates just a little bit of static. It's like, it'll crunch. A good audio engineer with kind of the golden ears will definitely hear that. So you do not want to avoid it. It would be like having for those who are visual, it'd be like having a painted canvas and having like paint, splatter out over the edge of the canvas onto the wall. And it's like, wait, did you not see that there was like, boundaries, right? Boundaries for where this artwork should be designed. Sonically, the VU meter is kind of setting up a similar boundary and you want to stay just within it. So -3 dB would be my advice for you there. So great question around editing the perfect audition. Lucy asks from YouTube Live, just giving some feedback, not a question. So thank you for that. Just around the job statuses. So there are a number, clients post a job. You're going to see a number of job statuses, which is a means for us, the platform really kind of communicating with you. And the comment from Lucy is, it's very rare to see a job marked as working. It's either hiring or deciding or completed. It'd be useful to know when a talent has been hired for the job and the job's off the market. So we've great piece of feedback. You're not alone. That's something I'll mention off the top. What's interesting is what we've tried to do is provide you with feedback on where the job is in relation to you. So where are you in the job? What's that relationship? You're either it's either in hiring where the client is still deciding whether or not they want to hire you. It's either completed where no, the job's completed and they've moved on with someone else. So it's completed from your perspective. If you were hired and you are the one working on it, that's when it's working. So we've tried, we've kind of gone back and forth, like, do we show kind of, let's call it a universal status, or is it a more personalized status? And we've opted for this personalized status, but Julia's going to make sure our product team hears about that, because sometimes these just all add up as a plus one. And if enough talent are making this, giving us this kind of feedback, making these comments, then it kind of creates this critical mass of going, okay, maybe we should rethink how we're doing that. So thank you so much for that feedback. If those of you who are subscribers to Voices and have ideas or improvements, we love to hear from you guys. You have built this thing. It's all of your ideas, everything from the layout to where buttons are placed, to the overall kind of feel and functionality, colors, and so forth. This whole experience is because you've either given direct feedback or you've participated in a customer advisory group or panel or something on these lines. So first off, thank you for participating. If you've got an idea or you've just got some feedback or a comment, you can always send it to feedback@voices.com. That gets channeled right into our Slack channel for the whole product and development team to see. And we take it from there. Sometimes there's a discussion about it, and then we just run with it from there. So that is inside tip on how to get that kind of feedback immediately noticed by the product team. Rita asks from YouTube, would it be possible to hear the audition that got selected? It would be so helpful. That's amazing. Again, not alone. We hear this all the time, and there's kind of two sides of this that would need to, dare I say, opt in to that. The talent that got selected would have to say, yeah, sure, let everybody else have at it. If I may, also talent want to know, and I want to know not only who got selected, or at least hear the audition. I want to know what was the quote, like, what do they get? What do they get paid? People want to get a sense of, like, am I plus or minus? Am I above or below, like, the actual, winning bid, sometimes people call it, or like the price that was proposed. So would it be possible to hear the audition, even if the talent were to agree? One option would be to somewhat anonymize it. So I think that's an idea. But if they said, yeah, sure, put my name out there, no worries. Then we also need to get the client to agree that, hey, other talent can hear who was selected. That's where it gets tricky. We've asked talent, they're like, absolutely, I'll contribute to the greater good of the community. They can hear my audition. I'm proud of the work because I got hired for it. The clients, on the other hand, often the projects are still under a non-disclosure agreement because it's a product launch. It hasn't aired. It's a campaign for something upcoming, so it hasn't aired yet. So that's usually where the hiccup is in the process. I agree, it would be tremendously helpful. So our solution to this was to simulate that experience and let you hear a number of auditions submitted in, I'm going to say, one of our favorite podcasts called Mission Audition. Now, if anyone's heard Mission Audition, just give a quick shout out on the in the comments here on YouTube. I think that'd be great. And maybe share kind of what one of your favorite episodes was. That would be awesome. But Mission Audition, the whole premise is to do, Rita, just exactly as you're describing. We write a script. So an internal writer at Voices writes a script. We work with the coach. We say, or an agent or a producer. We post the job on voices.com. We pay somewhere $500 or what have you. We say it's for audition purposes. Anyone that auditions is actually, it's a real job because it's kind of for the content for this podcast. But anyone who auditions, you're doing so with the knowledge that your audition may be critiqued on this podcast. So, and then, the one that the producer picks, they get paid the money. And so they get hired for this as well too. So it's kind of a nice reward from two sides. One, you obviously get very valuable feedback, not only hearing other people, but if you're hired, then that's tremendously validating as well. And you'll hear why you got hired. That's also important, not just that you did, but what is it that client or producer liked about you, which can help, self-reinforce, if you will, maybe what you should continue doing, because that was really positive feedback for you. And the other thing is it builds up your ratings and reviews. So that's great, gives you more visibility on the platform. So please check out Mission Audition. I think you'll get a ton of value out of that. Eric Heath, JM asks on YouTube, how big is the market for voices in Spanish? So the global market for VO, we've, again, Julie, if you could, one of our reports is it was done in 2017. The data is pretty accurate. We internally update it every year. Is a global market report on voiceover. At the time, we did it by category, not necessarily language or geography. But we sized that up through quite extensive research of, just north of $4 billion globally spent on hiring voiceover in particular. I would believe Spanish is probably in the multi-hundreds of millions of dollars. Even in the US, last thing I read, a while back was about 30% of Americans speak Spanish. So let's call it like a third of that market. Now that was 4 billion globally. I believe it broke out to somewhere around the neighborhood of like more than $1 billion in the US. So yeah, probably somewhere about, 300, 400 million, something like that. So definitely a healthy market. I believe, again, now I'm not trying to rely too much on my 80-20 rule here, but I believe like 15-20% of the jobs are actually in languages other than English, with Spanish being the most frequently posted after English. Now, at Voices, we don't have the site translated into those other languages. At present, it's just an English-only platform. Might be an opportunity in the coming years, but just wanted to give you that as a heads up. That if that's something that you think would be beneficial, you wanted the site translated, let us know. I mean, again, I'll circle back to this product team. They thrive off of the feedback that you guys give, so that's why the email is just feedback@voices.com. If you would benefit and feel like that might open up some more doors of opportunity for you, we're all for that. Brian, just quick comment. Hey, thanks so much. This is amazing. Quick question is, would you advise that the last listen in the audition should be in the headphones and not through the computer speakers? So great question here. So just for context, it sounds like you're maybe doing some, like listening tests for some different scenarios. You're right. Sometimes when you record an audition and always do a playback, you would be surprised. Sometimes it's like, oh, I thought I hit record and it was like a different input, or the microphone was, the gain was down and you heard it coming through a different output when there's like records silence. So always do, it's called a playback. Basically, you're playing back your audition so that what you hear is exactly kind of what you're sending. Now, speaking of the what you hear, very subjective. You might hear one thing in a room where you have maybe your desktop speakers, and then it might sound quite a bit different if you have your headphones on. I think it's a great practice. I'm not sure if it's necessarily an order, but I would encourage you to do both. Not sure of your experience level or how often you've been doing audition. I'm sure over time, like anything, you get the confidence of like, okay, this is this. I was just auditioning last track. I know it sounds good. So maybe at the beginning of the day, make sure, headphones, speakers, it's all sounding the way I left it yesterday, and you're good to go for your next audition. The reason why it's actually really good advice, honestly, to be able to listen to both. So thanks for bringing that up, headphones and computer speakers. Is it, we don't know how that client is going to listen to your audition. They might just be, I've heard of clients listening to auditions on they work in an ad agency in New York. They're, commuting back and forth. They're listening to auditions on the train, which is loud and rumbly, and they're just cranking it up with maybe some, Beats noise canceling or Bose noise canceling headphones. They're making the most of their time. Other times they're in like a conference room where it's like a group listening session. And it's like some kind of garbage speakers built into a TV in a conference room. So you don't know the context of how they're going to listen to that. Back in the days where, I was, at the audio engineering school, this was the kind of listening test that you do for like a final mix. And some of the most world-renowned producers, where they go listen to their final mix and they're like, old, like Honda Civic, it's like 94 Honda Civic, just stock speakers that are coming out of it, because they realize that if it sounds good on, the most kind of, widely used format, which, again, at the time, radio going through the car, especially for like a, pop top 40 song. If it sounds good in that environment, it's going to sound amazing anywhere. They do all the mixing in the studio, but just as a final check, kind of, you almost bring it down to like the worst quality possible, worst speakers possible. That's probably why you're thinking like, hey, maybe I'm just going to finish up with the headphones. If it still sounds good on the headphones, then you've got something solid there. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for still sticking in here, guys. We got a bunch more questions I'm going to get to. So don't go anywhere. Robert asks, I tend to do longer auditions. Is that a negative? And then there's another question earlier about how long an audition should be. So I would suggest really no longer than, call it 10 to 15 seconds, depending on what you're auditioning for. So if it's a really short script, like a voicemail or a 30-second radio spot, you should not be reading the whole script. Clients can't just, take your audio and run. We try to put safeguards in to prevent that kind of activity. But I think one of the easiest ways that you can do that's totally in your control is actually recording only a portion of the script instead of the whole thing. So that would be one thing. Again, if you're going longer than 15 or 20 seconds, honestly, no need. The clients, and this might be heartbreaking to some of you, but clients are just going to go through like rapid fire, like probably 5 to 10 seconds, unless they like what they hear. It's kind of like, if you're on Instagram or Pinterest and you're scrolling through a feed. I know it's an analogy, but you're scrolling through a feed. You almost get, there's this moment of pause when you're like, oh wow, that's an interesting photo, or like, I like what I see, I'm going to pause on it. Similarly, clients are going to listen for 5-10 seconds ago, either yes, and they're going to shortlist, or at least get, we used to have kind of the thumbs up, but same kind of idea, they're shortlisting you, or they're going to go, nope, next. And that is a very quick process. If they have, let's call it, 25, 50, sometimes there's upwards of 100 auditions for these great paying VO jobs. There's going to be 100 people of auditions. Like, that's worth $2,000, $3,000. Of course, I'm going to throw my hat in the ring. Then the clients, they've got a lot of auditions to go through, I guess is my point. So even if they were to spend, 10, 15, 20 seconds each, it's at least an hour of activity, because there's time in between. Maybe they're taking notes. Maybe they're, again, adding to a short list and kind of getting organized. It's a couple hours of time to get down to that one that they want to work with. So I don't think you're not adding any more value recording a longer audition. I would say, if anything, I would do multiple takes. So some of you might have been here last month where I talked about this Goldilocks effect of, you kind of do, one middle of the road, one that's a little over the top and kind of like extreme, and one that's a little subdued. But I mean, if you're gonna record only a portion, you can do multiple takes as another strategy. Not that it's the be all end all. Some people are like, nope, I just do one and then I move on. So going back to, what's the right way to be successful as an actor, as a voice actor, or talent in the industry? No single way that it's done, but I wouldn't be going longer than 20 to 30 seconds. Like, I'd probably cut it off there. There was a similar question. I'm going to try to scroll down to it because it was around actually recording for audiobooks. And that's the only use case or scenario where you might want to consider going a little bit longer, only because you're trying to bring people into like a sense of wonder, and you're telling a story, and you almost want to stay in character for longer, especially if there's an accent. Like if you're a narrator and you're telling a story and there's different characters, you want to be able to switch between those characters and still get back into character and have a different voice of the narrator versus the characters you're saying. So to, recreate all that in an audition, it might need to be a little bit longer. I've heard of, audiobook auditions definitely being at the 1 minute mark. Some have been longer than that. But I think make sure for most of the projects, 30 seconds would be suitable. Okay. Cool. So I'm just going to try to skip around here because we're still on auditions. Dustin from Instagram asks, how many shortlists would be good for getting, how many shortlists would be getting per auditions? I think we might have just maybe a bit of a grammatical issue there. So basically, out of all my auditions, like, should I be getting a 1 in 10, 1 in 5? So it looked like from the FAQ successful talent statistics, maybe Julia can add that again, because I see that more people have joined us since the beginning. And it looks like if you can get a shortlist rate of somewhere, 5%, 10%, somewhere in that neighborhood, you're in good standing there. So hopefully that was helpful. We also have a question from Instagram that I'll come back to YouTube Live in just a second. Do I need a qualification to try this out? So beginner question. I'll go through this quick because I know there's a lot of pros on the line here. Do I need a qualification? No, you don't need a university degree to be an actor or even a voice actor. I think there's definitely skills that are transferable skills that you may already have. I mentioned off the top acting. A lot of people come from an acting background or live performance. So look at acting classes, maybe improv classes. Probably the most difficult part, if you're much more on the creative side, would be voice acting also needs the technical. If you're going to be recording auditions from home, you need to know how to record and edit audio. And that's done through GarageBand, Audacity, Adobe Audition, one of these software suites. So you're definitely going to need to know that. And then the business skills, just good communication skills, making sure you're using, grammar, punctuation, spelling when you're communicating electronically through the messaging application, by email, and then good marketing skills as well too. So that's kind of the triple threat that we call it: the acting, the technical skills, and business skills that you would need to be successful. But you don't need a qualification. There's no official certification in the industry. Rita Patney from YouTube Live, is there any help for how to successfully do a live directed session? Often asked for in auditions. Often asked for in auditions now. So great topics. So just maybe for context for those who have just joined us, if you were, what is a live directed session? So again, at one point, it was very common where, we would go into a recording studio and the producer would be there, hey, hit this note higher, tone it down here, have it tail off at the question, at the end. If it's a question, it should be like, your voice tends to, lilt up at the end of that sentence. So they would be providing all that feedback in real time because they're right there in the booth. You're in the vocal booth, and you'd be kind of having this two-way dialogue. So two things happen. I think, the internet and all has been wildly beneficial for freelance talent, voice talent from all around the world to be able to get work and work with clients who aren't in the same city. So it means you can't really be with them. The other thing more recently, of course, would be COVID-19. Studios are closed. You're not really able to be able to go into studios and have these directed sessions as before. So the way they're done now is a live directed session really kind of has a couple flavors. One would be, I'm going to call it a studio to studio connection, using where your recording software is synced up with the recording software of the producer on their end. And, we'll share an article on ISDN and IPDTL and all these, Julia. And if it goes through all the technologies that provide that session to session connectivity. The other thing is, let's just call it, kind of Rita, what you're describing here is just the live direction portion of it. You don't need any special software. It could be done through Skype, FaceTime, Google Meet, Zoom. You're not doing the recording through those, but it's a means of having call it what it is, a video conference call, a video communication where they can see you, you can see them, and you're getting some feedback either way. So discern which of these flavors of live directed session it actually is. Do you need that studio to studio connection, or is it really just a video call that's happening? Everyone's always going to feel very nervous on the first one, but I would encourage you to have a very professional tone in it. A lot of talent I've spoken with, they realize that this is your session and your space. Even though it's what they wanted, they're expecting you to be in charge. So think of yourself as both the owner of this kind of calendar invite and event, to actually run it the way you want to run it. So it's like, hi, Mrs. Klein, I'm so looking forward to our session today. Anything you want to tell me in terms of initial direction to get going? I just want to be efficient with our time. So I think if you set that tone at the beginning, then they know you're down to business. To be blunt about it, your time is money, and it's actually their money. So you don't want to be wasting it, and they don't want, all the chit chat. You got to stay on schedule because you might have another session afterwards. So keep things professional and to the point. And I would employ the direction that they give you. Even if it sounds strange or odd, I wouldn't challenge them. I think you're there to be malleable and let them try to get the best take that they hear in their head. They want you to be a conduit to relay that message. So whatever they're giving you is in terms of advice, whether it's say it faster or slower or higher or lower, try your best to interpret that, internalize it, and deliver a great take. In the end, I would finish it off by making sure that they got everything they were looking for. Mrs. Klein, that's so awesome. We had a great session today. I just want to make sure before we both sign off that you feel confident that we had a great, that you got everything out of me that you were looking for from this session, and get that affirmation. I think would be really valuable at the end of that call before you both hang up. At the end, I would let them disconnect first. Just like we all do, give a quick sign off and wave, and let them disconnect just in case something like, oh, there was one more thing that popped in my, you want to be there for that. Personal note, but it's kind of like my mom once said, when you're giving someone an embrace or a hug, you never want to be the first one to let go, because you always let the other person let go or kind of back off first. So same thing on a conference call, you always let the other person hang up first. So I thought that was good advice from my mom. So very cool. Eric asks, if we work from a different country than in the USA, do we need to pay taxes to the USA government? I am no tax expert, so I would be careful in answering that question. As a freelance talent, truth is you're running your own business. So you, at some point, you're probably going to either have a sole proprietorship, meaning you're running your business kind of just as yourself. Maybe it's a partnership, which is you and someone else, maybe your spouse or brother or sister, or another family member, or maybe somebody else that you've gone into business with. So that's a partnership. And the last one would be like, an incorporation, which just has more protections for the business entity, but it's also more expensive. And so I think the takeaway here is you want to be running it like a business. You want to track your income and all the applicable taxes as well too, so that you may owe to a government. So I would ask, if you work with an accountant on your personal front now, I would seek the advice from a professional. I can speak from personal experience, that there's certain things that you think, wow, geez, this is really expensive. I'm paying someone $100 an hour or a couple $100 an hour to give me advice. Well, it's because, as the adage goes, you get what you pay for. In this situation, you're getting great advice by talking directly to a lawyer, or in this case, an accountant. So I would point you in that direction. Okay, everyone. Well, that's all for today. What a great session. I thought we covered everything there is to know about auditions and then some. Join me again for the upcoming office hours next month. We're going to try to do this the last Friday of every month. In the meantime, if you have questions around your help with using voices.com, then the platform or the mobile apps or anything along that line, you can send them to support@voices.com. That goes right to the customer support team. Be happy to help you out and guide you on the right path there. If you have feedback on how to improve the platform, you can just send a quick email to feedback@voices.com. And again, that goes to the product and development team. So before we sign off, I would love nothing more than a quick shout out or a comment, or let me know what you thought of today's session. And if you can, and if you haven't already, subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can get the latest updates from us here. All right, everyone, thanks so much.